than your currency. Splurging millions, buying houses like Monopoly. Fucking 9 to 5, man, the money is a joke to me. Buying cryptocurrency, my money in the privacy. I make it rain dollars, they watch me disappear.
Hey guys and girls, welcome to this week's episode of the No BS with Birchy podcast. I'm your host, Nathan Birch. This is the show unraveling the truth to the facade of the 21st century. We're now exiting the matrix and waking up to motherfucking reality. And guys, what reality it is in 2022. Lots of cool things happening already. Lots of things that we'd predicted in the past that are rolling out and hitting us right in front of our faces. So probably the biggest one out there is inflation. I will go into that. Today's going to be a lot of questions asked in from you guys in the community. So if you do have questions, however you send them through, whether it's putting comments or messaging into my team or whatever, keep them coming. And I will keep answering those things for you. A lot of the questions, I've just had a real quick skim over them. I've got a few questions here to answer. And a lot of them, what I see is people that are concerned about inflation, right? Inflation's the biggest thing this year. I've been surprised over the last 2 months going to the shops. You can't find anything there. Shelves are bare everywhere. This is something we've seen out there massively. And I think it's going to get a hell of a lot worse in the next 12, 24, 36 months. But ultimately, you don't go into a shop and see that prices rise and then they just fall. When have we ever seen the ability to go into a shop, you see the price rise, it goes from $2, $3, $3, $4, $4, $5. That might take 10 years for it to happen. Just think about a can of Coke, right? As a kid, go to the machine, you put in 60 cents, 80 cents, you get a can of Coke and you walk off with it. Now, if you go buy a can of Coke, it'll cost you $3 if you're lucky, maybe $4, $4.50, $5. $5 is becoming the old $2, right? Looking at the prices, I've never seen, this year a can of soft drink was $4 and it became $3. It just continuously goes up. So think about all these price rises that we're seeing due to, people not getting any stock into their shops or whatever. And then think about, will this ever come backwards? And if it doesn't, well then how do we survive in this, I hate to say it, the new normal? And the only thing that I'd say the new normal around is nothing to do with anything that's gone on for the last 2 years. The new normal is the inflation we're about to see and we're starting to see. And it's not being reported on. We're seeing CP lie. The CPI index is a complete and utter fucking lie, right? Go fill up your grocery baskets. What has gone up 3% or 3.5% or even 10%? Everything's gone up by at least 10%. So here we go. First question in from the community is, I run beef cattle and I've been expanding that with the view of farming full-time within the next 12 months. Your podcast today has made me question if current cattle prices and all meat and commodity prices are due to the season or more so to do with the levers being pulled further up and inflation. Do you see meat being replaced by the fake meat industry? I will answer that in two parts of a question. And firstly, just to say, I don't have names of who's put this through, so apologies if people are getting scared, but I think it's very important to question, because if you're not faced with things, you don't know how to react and it hits you like the left hook. Are prices going to continue to rise? I believe they will. Will it be linear? I actually said many years ago, I made this series, I suggest everyone to watch it. It's about 10 hours of me ranting about stuff that sounded really random. It's called Raw and Uncut. It's a webinar series, 5-part webinar series on YouTube called Nathan Birch, Raw and Uncut. And no, it's not a porno, it's on YouTube. It's not on RedTube. It's the series it was, because it was just raw and as it was. And it was probably before the time of people realizing anything like this would happen. And inside of that, I talk about the fact that when we start seeing this Great Depression, it's going to be a massive depression of biblical proportions, which we're in. There's only two ways to get through it. One is to let everything crash, or two is to print so much money, it just doesn't seem like anything. But when we print so much money, we're going to head into a thing called a hyperinflation. And I knew that they'd go down that road, and that's the exciting part by it. You could see on the videos I'm laughing and finding it funny and all that, and people like thinking I'm off my head. But the thing is that this inflation is here to last. And I talked about it in that series, and I talked about that we would see these mini, actually I don't know if it was in that series, it was in a mentoring program I did at the time. It was an offline mentoring program that people subscribe to, where I talked about that we would see recessions. Normally, they say 10 years, you'd see a boom and a bust and a bear market and a bull market and all these different things. But we would see these markets boom and crash every year. And these gaps would get smaller and smaller, where we'd just see them make a little adjustment and things would fall, the wheels would fall off a cart. We're at a point now where we've been printing so much money over the last 2 years, it's caused massive levels of inflation. But we're still not at a hyperinflation. And they're going to, the central banks around the world, they're putting out their reports and all that constantly each month. And the media with the propaganda is on overdrive. And they're saying interest rates are going to go up, interest rates are going to go up, interest rates are going to go up. This is going to happen. They're going to curb back quantitative easing. We're going to be reversing the balance sheet and all these sorts of things. Really what they're doing now is they're so fucking screwed that they can't stop printing money. And if they do, and they do put interest rates up, the whole system will crash. So if you look at all the central banks that have put up the interest rates, we've seen that they've gone up 0.1%, right? The economies that have put the interest rates up by 10 basis points or 10% of 1%, which is nothing, it's not even 0.25%, it's 0.1%. These countries that have done that, the markets have actually turned to shit, and they're seeing deflation. And as these markets go backwards, that's only putting it up by 10% or 1%. Imagine if the interest rate just went up by 0.5%, right? That's 5 times what they're doing. It's going to cause chaos. They're going to attempt to try and tighten the balance sheets. But what it's going to do is cause recession, and we will see recessions, but they'll quickly have to then go on reverse course and print over it. When they say they're going to stop stimulus packages and they're going to reverse the balance sheet, what they're talking about is instead of printing $10 billion a week worth of money and printing it and giving it out to the community, they're only going to be printing $8 billion a week and giving it out to the community. They're looking at these sort of things and going, this is a great thing. We're only going to have to, throw this much water at the fire. But the problem is that when they reverse the balance sheet, it's going to cause massive recessions. Not 1 decade, not 2 decades, the last 5 decades since 1970s is that they just have to keep creating new stimulus packages. But the problem is now they've got so many stimulus packages running, they're running out of options of how to create stimulus packages for it. So as they keep creating more and more money, printing more and more money, finding more excuses to blame things, we're going to see higher levels of inflation. And this actually takes me to another thing I was thinking the other day. I actually went to a butcher. So you're asking me about your cattle farm and doing all your farming. I went to a butcher the other day, right? And I was like, look, let's get some food. And I was at my holiday house and I thought, butcher will have it. Went in the butcher and there was just cloth over the front counter. So in the window, you'd see all the meat in the little glass display. There was just cloth hanging over that. And I went inside and I said, hey, can I get some minute steak to throw on the barbecue, some rissoles and some sausages? And he goes, okay, I'll go out the back. And he got this piece of meat and cut the meat himself. And I was sitting there looking as he was doing this. It took like maybe 5 minutes, 10 minutes. It was probably the only pieces of meat they had out the back of their shop. And I was sitting there looking in where the meat would normally be, and they had vegetables, right? And inside the butcher, they had half rotten looking fruit, brown spots, all that sort of stuff, because people aren't going to the butcher as a fruit shop, but they're trying to find stuff that they can sell to keep their business open, is what I believe. So looking at if you had a retail shop, let's just take this back a next step. Let's think about whether you're a small corner store. Your profit and your business would be getting meat in, selling meat out, making a premium. Whether you take the meat away and you go, I'm selling shoes. I buy shoes for $10 and I sell shoes for $20. I'm doubling the cost of the shoe. That's my business. If you have no shoes to sell, you have nothing to make a profit on. There's so many businesses out there that I see that will not make it through this. My thought is that if you have the actual good, right, you are in a very powerful position, right? Because people need access to that commodity. You have a commodity. So I think everybody should have their own little farm going in their house. So they've got their own chickens for eggs, and they've got their own little garden for food, and got some animals that you can, if you have to. And yeah, like I think it's very important. So if you have got a cattle station, if you've got a farm to breed any type of animal on it, a question I would ask, and always think about this, right? If you have an animal and you could sell it today, I don't know the cost of animal. I don't go and trade in that sort of market. But if you've got an animal for whatever the cost is, and in 6 months' time it's going to be worth double, would you want to sell it today, or you just keep that one animal and then sell it in 6 months' time for more money? There's some of the questions that you need to be asking, because if you sell all your animals and you can't go get new animals, then what other stock do you have to sell? So think very carefully, if you have a business with stock, can you replenish your stock, and how easy and how difficult would it be, and what do you need to do to trade that? In answer to your question, I think we're going to see everything inflate massively. We've already seen massive levels of inflation. As I said, I bought 5 sausages, 5-minute steaks, and 5 rissoles, right? It was just random. I was having a barbecue, had some people over, had niece and nephew over, and I just got a handful of food. And then there was like $50 for sausages and rissoles, right? Who remembers those meat trays, right? Wonder if there's a question. Wonder if the local bowling club's doing a meat raffle anymore. It's too expensive for that shit, right? So we're seeing inflation already. We're going to see it get heaps worse in the coming period of time. Do I see meat being replaced by the fake meat industry? Unfortunately, I believe that's what a lot of this is for. If you notice, there's endless supplies of all of these fake meats and whatnot, and the people that are coming out with the think tanks, whether it be the World Economic Forum or any of those sort of Davos or Klaus Schwab sort of initiatives with Bill Gates and Warren Buffett and all those criminal people in it, you'll look at these businesses and go, okay, they're pushing this agenda of, it's bad for the environment to grow cattle, it's bad for the environment to do this, it's bad for the environment to do that. And they're giving you an alternative solution, which is a new profitable business selling whatever type of meat it is, right? And there's lots of entities doing it. I'm not going to go into each and individual brands and all that sort of stuff. But we're looking at this meat that's being pushed down our throat, and you need to be questioning yourself, what chemicals are in there? What are the chemicals doing? If you're feeding yourself a genetically modified organism, being most of the meat and most of the seeds and most of the grains that you're feeding yourself, what's it doing into your body? What happens if you've got a fully synthetic piece of rubbish that you're throwing into yourself? What is it doing to your body? There's minerals, there's benefits to having meat, there's things that it does for your body, and this is being hidden from people. So if you ask me my opinion, they're trying to shove fake meat instead of real meat, and they're going to make meat too expensive for the average person to go to afford to have. So it will become a very expensive product to have. It'll be a very rare product for people to have, and they'll have it as a treat rather than, it'll be like a bottle of expensive scotch or wine or whatever, rather than having it as a staple diet. And the meat, as we could all imagine, you go down to Woolworths, you go down to Coles, you go down to these big box supermarkets, you can't tell me the quality of this food has got any better, and you can't tell me that there's not any other chemicals that are being put into a lot of these meats out there. So I think it's going to go down in a very bad way. Crypto exchange introduced in CBA. Look, there's lots of people out there giving advice in crypto. I'm very well versed when it comes to crypto. It's a market that I think is very fascinating. I think there's a lot of potential to be had there. I think there's a lot of people that are overhyping things. I think that it's a whole new world. I think there's a lot of scams out there. I actually think the whole market is a scam. I think fundamentally what a lot of cryptos have is very, very good. But I've always said from the start, crypto can be used to create peace and prosperity like never seen beforehand in the last 2,000 years, or it can be used to create a very controlling communist sort of system. And it appears to me that the way that it's going is, going more towards the communist system, as well as, being controlled, and there's a lot of sort of scams out there as well. So my view around, crypto becoming more mainstream, like, it hasn't changed, right? My view on crypto, I still own all of my crypto. I've sold little bits and pieces of crypto along the years as it's gone up and done stupid things. And when I say sold things, I'm talking about things that may have hypothetically been $300 that turn into $50,000 and those sort of gains, because it's like, it's pretty cool. But my view on the crypto market is that it's something that's going to be around us for a very long time. Looking at integration between these big institutions, that scares me. I think that if you had Bitcoin being traded around between mates around a table, all that sort of stuff, it would be much greater than being introduced via these large institutions, because eventually they're going to rape and pillage the crypto market just like they have done with all other markets, and create derivatives around these things. So the physical assets will not be in existence, and it gives openings as they build, as this becomes more mainstream, for them to create derivatives, for them to be able to create futures markets, for them to be able to artificially inflate or artificially suppress the value of these things by making, financial products on top of financial products on top of financial products. So if we look at, housing shouldn't be the price it is. Shares shouldn't be the price they are. Lots of things shouldn't be what they are. Gold and silver shouldn't be as cheap as what they are. But if we look at crypto, I think those same sort of parameters could play as these large financial institutions start getting involved. I think in the short period of time, it could be good. It creates speculation, hype, and obviously create little bubbles that occur inside of the market. But in the bigger picture, I actually think it'd be better if they just all kept the fuck away from touching the native assets, being the crypto tokens themselves. Because, I look at a lot of exchanges now, and some coins you can only trade $500 or you can only trade $1,000. The liquidity of them is so low. What happens if you want to go and buy $1 billion worth of crypto? What happens if you want to go and sell $1 billion worth of crypto? Are there really the back end? Like in the future, let's assume that all the banks have crypto trading. Does that mean the bank really owns all of it, or are they going to do a fractional reserve lending style version of it? Because back in the old days, you used to think that I put money in the bank has all my money. If you go and ask the bank, they don't have any money. You put $1 million in the bank says, well, you can get $2,000 out, you can get $3,000, go to the ATM, that's where your money is. Maximum daily limit, $2,000, $1,500, whatever the case may be. You can't go get $1 million out. So by putting your trust into these larger institutions, I think the bigger picture, it could cause a bigger issue. So I embrace it. It is what it is. We can't change it. I think it's very important to have a strategy around crypto, to be fluid with that strategy as well, to be able to move with markets as they change, as they evolve. But most importantly, make sure that whatever crypto assets you have, you keep them offline and in your own hardware wallet. So keeping them in your own possession is very, very important. Own your own private keys. And as much as you can, try and get access to virgin coins. And when I say virgin coins, do a bit of research into what a virgin token is. It's a token that never hit an exchange. It's a token that never existed. You have to go and create it. So generally, these can come from mergers of coins, and basically, say for instance, if you went and bought, I'll just use this one token as an example. If you had EOS, for example, it started off on the Ethereum network, and then it went off onto its own EOS network, and it has, if you had that coin that was stored into a wallet that had never entered into any sort of exchange, that would be a virgin coin, because it would be kept offline and would never have seen the day of light in an exchange. If you have mined a coin, well then it's in a virgin wallet. So you want to make sure that you have a strategy around that. Virgin coins are very, very cool, and I think that if someone was to actually have virgin crypto, that it could be worth a lot more than crypto that's been put into exchanges. So there's another thing to consider. Is the Tasmanian housing shortage. The government is building the government housing like nothing I've ever seen, and yet we have empty housing commission homes. What is their game plan? I don't know, it's Tasmania, right? It's no offense to anyone in Tasmania. I've been there before, lovely place, love all the timber stuff. Wish I could go there and get some timber and bring back home. As for the government building house commission homes, what they're doing is they're trying to sprinkle jobs. So they want to try and create jobs. They're trying to create new housing. They're trying to create stuff. So that's why they do these stimulus packages. Eventually, as they create more and more stimulus packages, people lose less and less control, and they get greater levels of control. So building government housing, building house commission, always saw infrastructure projects on the plans of getting through hyperinflation. You may see more and more of these things occur over the years to come. But getting into the housing shortage in Tasmania, there is many markets out there in this country at the moment where things have been flipped on their head. If we go to any coastal towns, there's so many coastal towns where I know very much so, because I've been spending the greater part of the last 2 decades exploring, buying, accumulating, researching these markets, that a lot of coastal towns where someone could live for $200 a week rent, there's been a massive influx of people buying property, taking stock out of the market, people building themselves a holiday home, whatever the case may be, someone selling up their house in the city, going to buy that, pulling out equity, going to buy a coastal home. That rents may have gone from $200 a week to $800 a week. Prices have gone up from $200,000 to $1 million in a lot of these coastal towns. So there's a lot of areas where there's changes in the market. And this is the unseen and the unreported part of the financial market. So if we look at stimulus packages, this is something I've thought about a bit lately, is that if we look at stimulus packages and we go, okay, they've printed off $1 billion of money. Let's just assume they just printed off $1 billion and they gave it to everybody. Everybody that has that money, someone might be selling their house. So their house goes up from $200,000 to $300,000. They have an extra money in their pocket, they can go buy something else. As this system goes around, the person that's buying the property from $200,000 to $300,000 is going back to the bank and creating a loan to pay that other money. So it wasn't $1 billion that got created, it's now $1 billion that's leveraged into another $3 billion worth of money. So for every billion, there might be $3 billion worth of currency being created, not directly from stimulus packages, but from extra cash slushing around in the system that people can then go and create loan products and other financial instruments on top. Now, let's assume and take that the next level, that if everybody's house, because that house went from $200,000 to $300,000, everybody in the street's house is now worth $300,000. That means that all those people, the other 10 people in their street, can then go and access equity in their property and pull out equity. And they've got more money to go and spend on a second-hand old Holden Commodore, or go and buy a new caravan, or go and buy a holiday house or a farm with. So there's all this currency that's being created out there, and as it's trickling through the systems, is having like a explosion as it creates more debt and more debt, and it's creating a bigger and bigger web. So the velocity of this currency being created has been seen from parts where people are talking JobKeeper, job seeker, all that, but the other parts of it is the unseen part, is as this money trickles down through the economy, people are now leveraging that money and going to buy more and more assets via leverage. So something else to consider on that front. Fourth question today is, if immigration means more money being earned and less and spent, won't this make inflation worse? The way inflation is reduced is through higher interest rates. Higher interest rates mean property prices will fall. Is this correct? That is 100% correct. If interest rates went up, people couldn't afford their debt, so they may sell off some of those properties, just like the example that I said beforehand with people having extra equity in their property. They then pull out that equity, they go buy something else, but the cost of money is so cheap, people can afford it, everyone can afford it. If the interest rate went up just by 0.5%, let's just say the interest rates went up by 0.5%, 50 basis points, that would mean that the current interest rate of 10 basis points would go up 5 times, right? Just 0.5% means that interest rates would go up 5 times in the wholesale market. The impact of interest rate increases today would be catastrophic. It would bankrupt everybody, right? But And, oh wow, Nathan's so negative today. I'm not negative, I'm so excited for it, because the fact is that they can't. They've already shown their hand. They're trying to stop the market from crashing, hence why they're printing so much money and creating quantitative easing, and it's going through all these markets. If they reverse this, there is no way that they can. So they have to keep not just keeping up with it, but trying to keep this system afloat. So they're going to have to throw more and more and more at it. The only way, and this comes back to inflation, all of us, and I want to be very clear on this, because I said this a few years ago and people thought I was racist, but I can assure you I'm not. Looking at, I pick on everyone equally. Looking at people, right, we're all born in the system as a tax slave, right? We're born, we go to a 12-year indoctrination camp to become a good little tax slave. You go out there, work hard, get extorted from the state, put it back in the system, and they control your life. For this system to evolve and for us to be able to pay our debts, we need to have more tax slaves in the system. We cannot breed tax slaves in our country quick enough and have them as 18, 20-year-olds that are going to be paying taxes. So what we need to do is we need to quickly get more and more tax slaves into our system. How we do that is we import more tax slaves. And when I say import, I just mean immigration. So it's very, very crucial now that for our system being our economy to not fold and not get too deep and too indebted to central banks and all that, for them to try and maintain a level of their balance sheet. They're going to now need to have to bring in more tax slaves via immigration and have more migrants coming in to help earn taxes to help pay and maintain that debt. So either everybody gets totally blown up in this system, or we just keep expanding the system and there are more parameters that we can do. So personally, in my view, one of the only tools that they have left for this next decade is for us to try and bring more people into this system so we can create an even bigger Ponzi scheme. And the way for us to do that is via migration, and that will create higher levels of inflation naturally, but it will be suppressed because we've got more people contributing to the debt that's being created from the state, so it can be hidden. So I think it will be great to see that have many more people come in the country, because there's going to be a demand for property and assets and our resources we've got, and we don't have enough resources, so that will take some of the slack. One of the questions that was the last question was the amount of not enough housing, but I don't understand it too clearly. The second part that said the government is building like nothing I've seen, and we have empty house commission houses. So all these properties that are being built today, they're helping us stay away from a recession. But if they're all empty, we're going to be like China with the ghost cities. So we need to find people to fill them very quickly. And then we need those people to be earning money, paying debt, paying taxes, all of that sort of stuff. So for us, the best way for us to do it is to have more immigration. But as that happens, we're going to have greater demands on our cattle. We're going to have greater demand on all of the other infrastructure that we need. And it will create a boom in a lot of industries, but it'll also put a lot of pressure from a inflation level, which would be quite exciting to see. So over the course of the next decade, you will not see anyone more excited than myself, but it doesn't always mean that that inflation is a good thing. Inflation is very good for people with lots of debt and with lots of assets, because their assets get inflated away and go up in value, and their debt becomes very worthless. So the people that are controlling this system and the controlling rulers and powers to be, these people are going to benefit very much so. So if this game is for these guys, how can you benefit? You can try and create a smaller scale version of the working model to be able to benefit yourself, which is going to be very good. But the problem is that as we do so, I recently saw, just from doing the renovation on the Mountains Hotel, for those of you that aren't following me on my personal socials and whatnot, you may not realize that I'm doing 8 renovations at the moment, 8 big motel renovations, and one of them is a very extensive one. It's got 40 units, 40 bathrooms, 40 lots of floors. There's about an acre of tiles I've had to order. Something so simple as a tile that I used to get for about $12 is now up to $20, and that's pretty cheap. A tile that I used to get, which is a floor tile, which is about $19 a square metre, is now, they were $29 going back a few months ago, and now it's up to about $34, $35 per square metre. So the problem that I see is that a lot of people as we are starting to see builders out there going bankrupt. Builders have never had so much business, so much demand, but they're going bankrupt because they can't keep up with the cost of inflation. The cost of goods to keep their business operating is far outstripping. So if the businesses fold, then we're going to see extra pressure into the market, and we're going to see prices rise even further, which is a lose-lose for people that are paying for things. So you really want to have your arc sort of full, so you've got enough to get through this hyperinflationary period. Otherwise, it could wipe out a lot of us. And I think it's important that everybody goes to research hyperinflations in other currencies. Hyperinflations have occurred for the last 1,000 years. The first hyperinflation occurred actually in 1024 AD, and that was in China. So just a bit of food for thought for the day. Question number 6 is, did I do question number 5? How has home ownership changed your view of the property market? That's a good question. So for me, it's been about 20 years since I bought my first property, going back in 2003. So it's 19 years this year since I bought my first property. The thought of ownership has changed a lot. I was actually talking to my nephew the other day who bought his house. We're out at the beach and we're in the ocean, having a little drink, having a chat. He's telling me he wants to sell his house that he bought last year and he wants to buy another house to live in with the family and all that sort of stuff. And he asked me, like, should I sell my place? Should I pull out the equity? What should I buy? And I said to him, I don't see much value in the Sydney market. There's actually a point where I'm looking at this market in Sydney. There's probably only about 3 markets that are in Sydney that I see any value in. And those markets are actually only units and townhouse and villa markets in specific locations in Sydney. Paying $1 million for a 5-borough house in the back of Mount Druitt, I can't justify the value there. Looking at other sort of areas, if I go to, and I'm not going to tell specific suburbs here because you're all going to try and steal my IP, but I bought some properties recently, these houses that used to sell for about $400,000 10 years ago. We're picking them up for about $250,000 for a house on land, like 800 square meters. You can't rebuild a house for that price. If it was for me, and I was starting out today, I would be buying 4 of those houses, which are concrete slab, brick house, tile roof for $250,000, rent for $350 a week, rather than one place for $1 million that would rent for $300 or $400 a week, and the numbers just don't stack up. So for me, over the years, I'm fortunate enough that I pushed myself a lot when I was younger, and I've always pushed myself. And even to this day, at the time of recording this, my phone is sitting to the side, and I need to get onto that phone because I've got lots of things that are going on because I'm just constantly pushing myself. So, you know, nothing in life is easy, and you know, pushing yourself out of your comfort zone has always been something for the last 19 years of investing has always been crucial for me to move forward. So for me today, if I was to start off again and build my portfolio, it would be the same principles, but it wouldn't be inside Sydney. It would be in other states where I see a lot more value. There is still opportunities in Sydney, but they're more, you know, units, townhouse and villa market, not houses. So my ownership view, if I was buying a house to live in, I've got like 5 principal place of residences in Sydney. So I am not that, I don't think about it that much, but I actually did have the view recently. I was talking to my mum, and I live on a development site and I could sell it in the future and get a lot of money. It's 10 acres. And I said to her, you know, what happens if I sell my house? I wouldn't actually be able to buy another 10 acres in Sydney because I'd be locked out of the market. So I actually wouldn't even want to sell it. If a developer came knocking tomorrow, you wouldn't see me selling it because I couldn't see value of what I could purchase after that property is disposed of. So looking at my view on the market, if I didn't have any principal place of residence and I had to go buy a principal place of residence for the first time in Sydney, I probably wouldn't. I'd probably buy myself a beach house, you know, a few hours out of Sydney, or I'd buy investment properties in other states. I would still start my portfolio, if I was starting today, straight up again, identical to how I did, but I'd find the market that would fit the numbers. The properties that I buy are all about the numbers. And it takes me on to the next question, which is number 6, which was, how do you properly analyse a property deal, what tools, techniques do you use? And when I'm buying properties, I'm thinking about how the property is going to help me get to the next step. The property is only a vehicle. The property is like a car. My car outside at the moment has 4 ladders on it, right? These ladders are massive, right? They go all off the front. Today, I wouldn't bring a sedan, I wouldn't bring a sports car, I wouldn't bring a hatchback because I needed a ute to put these ladders on. So that is a vehicle that I would choose to drive today. But if I was looking at, whatever the case may be, you need a different vehicle for the different outcome. When I look at a property, I'm thinking about what is the outcome. I'm thinking about my strategy. I'm thinking about my overall plan. I'm thinking about the future of going, okay, how does this asset fit in line with what I'm trying to achieve? And how's it going to help me get there aggressively? But how's it going to help me remove risk? How's it going to fit in line with my exit strategy? How's it going to fit in from a financing perspective? And what is it going to do for me? So when analyzing a deal, I always talk about buying things below market value and capital growth and upside for positive cash flow. But the thing is that when I'm looking at a deal specifically, I'm thinking, okay, how is this deal specifically going to get me from this step to the next step, to the next step, and the next step? The end step is to take all the money from the banks that you can get, to get as many assets as you can, get the largest net worth position, and to get the highest cash flow position coming through your bank account every week. It's not about how I can make my next few dollars from selling a property. It's not from how I can build a development site and chop it all up and sell it off. It's not about having money. It's about having the assets that are going to give me the choices, the opportunities, and the freedoms to do what I want, when I want, how I want, and live life on my terms like I do. If it wasn't for my property portfolio, I wouldn't be able to do 95% of the shit that I do on a day-to-day basis. So looking at the strategy, it all comes down to, like, people say to me, I want to buy a house, I want it to be in this location, whatever the case may be. For me, I'm thinking about, what does the bank need from me? Do they need equity for the next deposit? Do they need cash flow to help me service for my next deal, etc.? So most people are like, I want to have that house. It's never, the question when I'm buying an asset is never what I want, it's what the bank needs for you to be able to move forward to the next deal. So just keep that in mind as to, if you could have $1 million of houses in Sydney, or you could have $5 million worth of houses, townhouses, units, villas, blocks of units in Brisbane, Cairns, Perth, Adelaide, I'm just making up suburbs here now. Would you rather have $1 million worth of one property type or $5 million of a different property type? If the market was to double and the 5 mil was to 10 mil, or the 1 mil turns to 2 mil, make your choices. I'd rather have the larger portfolio that continuously grows. So very important to look at that. Question number 7 is, how do you identify headache areas? I think that comes down to research. So knowing regions, knowing the demographic, knowing the types of people, knowing the types of tenants. People have come to me over the years and said, oh, I wouldn't buy in a specific area because they're bad people. I've had some tenants in my properties for the last 18 years, 17 years, which are on the lowest end of socioeconomic. I've seen bongs in their house. It's not my position to go and, say, hey, don't have a smoke. I see cans, like VB cans and whatever, thrown in their front yard. It's not in my position to say how to live their life. They have never defaulted on rent. They have kept the place very, very clean. If there's a problem with the place, they generally change the tap handle, whatever, doesn't cause me any maintenance. Whilst in the same token, or on the other side of the coin, I've got properties which are, views of the Harbour Bridge, right? And there's a property that I owned once, which was in Vaucluse. And that property, you think about Vaucluse, it's the most expensive suburb in Sydney, if you think about that. But if you look at Vaucluse, it's also next to Double Bay, which is the cocaine capital of Australia as well. So what sort of tenant would you attract into that property? I've got a property which I was just talking about beforehand with someone, which is a $2 million house and land sort of package that I built years ago. It was only a couple $100,000. And there's 2 houses on the one block. And I had a tenant in there, which was a fabulous tenant. The tenant was there for many years. Family, really lovely. You'd think this is suburbia. It's the housewives, right? Whatever, white picket fence, the lifestyle. Anyway, the couple separated, got kids, started hitting the cans, got a new partner, started getting a few punches in the wall, rents never got paid, all of that sort of stuff. So you can never, have an opinion as to this is a bad tenant, this is a bad area, whatever the case may be. You need to, dig a little bit deeper and make sure what I think is bad and what I think is a headache is not having access to tenants, is having long vacancy periods, having risk where you can't sell a property. You need to make sure that you've got an exit strategy for that. You don't want to have a property as well, an area that's going to get completely trashed. There have been a couple of random, very regional properties that I bought over the years. I bought them for like $8,000, $10,000. Back in my early days when I first quit my job, I was up to about 25 properties and bought some of these really crap sort of properties and renovated them, put tenants in. They became more of an admin issue. So I've sold some of them off, and it's like I don't want anything to do with them because they just take too much energy, take too much mindset. But when you go to those areas, you can tell that you are not welcome in those areas. So very, very important, to have a good knowledge. If you are unsure of an area, it's important to have someone that can help look for that asset for you. And naturally, I've spent about 8 hours a day, 365 days a year for the last sort of 20 years almost, researching these markets and locating and negotiating deals. So that's how I get them below market value. That's how I get them where they've got good upside for growth. That's how I get them where they've got the risk minimization. And I run a buyer's agency, as a lot of you guys may or may not know. I do all the deals for all of my investors. So if you need help on researching and getting it right, and you don't want to screw things up, you can reach out to my team and get my help on building that portfolio. So if you need help on anything, you can always reach out to us, 1300 367 925. Email us at admin@binvested.com.au. And as always, keep your comments coming through. It gives me things to talk about with you guys and to answer your questions. I've got a whole pile more, but I will get on to that on another episode. We'll catch up soon. Have a great day. Keep being awesome. Make sure that you like, share, subscribe, and you can find us on Apple, Google, Spotify. We'll catch up soon. Bye for now.
Like Bilal said, man, we're stuck in the matrix. This my advice, don't care if you take it. The dollar about to die, soon to be hyperinflated. This my 2 cents, don't care if you save it. Joint be decentralized and you will see you've been lied to the whole time, and it's the irony, cause they do the exact opposite. You become a slave to the system, enough your money, all they do is profit. There's no conspiracy theory, you better hear me. Crypto will set you free before the system does. I don't care if you do or you don't, but what I'm saying is the truth to the reason you choke. I never been a failure, excuse my behavior. Keep talking, haters doing me a favor. They all tell lies, I know what they been telling you. I'm the opposite, the Donald Trump of Australia. It's amazing, there for the taking, my time is never wasted. Yes.